Admiral Benson appeared on the tabletop view screen, looking very concerned. Captain Picard, I was preparing to contact you about some reports concerning the temporal rifts. Have you found anything yet? Picard gave a grim frown. Unfortunately, yes. The colony on Brayton II has been decimated by an attack. What? By who? That is not yet known, sir. Whomever they were used, as far as we can tell, 50 ships with ion drive propulsion. They launched multiple thermonuclear missiles from orbit, which rendered the entire planet completely lifeless. And there was evidence that this was the result of the temporal rifts? Picard nodded his head slightly. Scans indicated that the energy trails left by their ships both started and ended abruptly, without a trace. It is our conclusion that the ships had come from a rift, destroyed a colony, and then left by a rift. This does show how a temporal device can be used for a decisive military maneuver using conventional weapons. Do you believe that these attackers may be the ones using a temporal device? Picard took in a quick breath. We have no evidence for that theory. My instinct says no, despite how quickly the unknown forces destroyed a planet and left. Surely a race able to create and control time would have more advanced weapons than thermonuclear warheads. Besides, if you undertook the effort to destroy a planet, why leave it so suddenly? The Admiral considered Picard's opinion. I see. Benson frowned. Nonetheless, Captain, any information that you can get on the ones that destroyed a colony would be helpful. Even if they are not the ones behind these time distortions, we will, at least, have something to go on. We are doing that now, sir, Picard replied. You said that you were going to contact me about the rifts? Yes, we have received 2 reports from within the Klingon Empire concerning temporal disturbances. The rifts lasted only for a few seconds, but they are exactly the same as the ones that we have been detecting. Sorry to interrupt, Captain, Wrecker's voice came over the intercom, but Data has found out who attacked the colony. Send him in, Commander, Picard announced. He looked back at the view screen. Looks like we may have a clue after all, Admiral. Data walked in to nod at Picard. Sir. Picard motioned for him to come over by the desk so that the Admiral would be able to see him as well. Report, Mr. Data. Sir, I have scanned our library banks for any race that possessed ion propulsion and used thermonuclear weapons. While I found 8 races known to the Federation that uses ion drive in their spacecraft, none used nuclear weapons at the time that they used the ion drives. However, one race did use nuclear devices along with ion drive. The missiles were of a thermonuclear type that was designed specifically for massive radioactive fallout. But you said that none of these races used nuclear devices as weapons, Data. Data gave a nod. Yes, sir, that is what I said. These nuclear devices were not used as weapons, but rather as a way to terraform a planet to make it possible for them to live on, as they require a radioactive biosphere. This time Benson cut in. Are you suggesting, Commander, that the destruction of the colony is the start of a colonization effort? It follows the recorded methods, Data answered back. He paused but for a moment before adding, however, there is one possible flaw to the theory. That is, Picard asked, getting somewhat tired of Data's way of giving a long explanation. The race I am informing you of are the Aurelia. The Aurelia? Benson exclaimed. Commander, your findings must be incorrect. The Aurelia are a peaceful race. They have been members of the Federation for decades and are light years from here. My findings are not incorrect, Admiral, Data explained. During their colonization period, they searched for planets with high radioactive field that could sustain them. Due to the rarity of such worlds, they would find uninhabited planets and detonate several nuclear devices to create the radiation levels necessary for their life forms. That is exactly what has occurred on Brayton II. Then what you are theorizing, Data, is that a temporal rift brought some of their ancient ships into our time and area. They destroyed the colony and disappeared back into their own time. Yes, sir, Data replied simply. But all that you have for proof is what they did centuries ago. Benson questioned. Yes. However, I have further researched the Aurelia race for any mention of this incident, since our premise is that one of their fleets from their past destroyed the planet. Picard moved slightly. And you found some reference to this event? Data nodded. I believe so, sir. What I found was in their mytho-religious stories. It tells of how one of their fleets was taken by the gods to a world inhabited by evil and commanded to destroy the planet with their fusion missiles. Once the planet was destroyed, the fleet was returned back from where they had come. The date of the story is 625 years ago. Although each ship's captain and crew attested to the accuracy of this story, it was considered so improbable that the historians classified it as a myth. Wait a minute, Data, Picard cut in. The story specifically states that the fleet was told to destroy the planet? That is what the story states, sir. However, we do not know exactly how they were told. It may not actually have been a true communication. But the fact is, Commander, Benson said, we do not know that it wasn't. That is true, Admiral, Data responded. If we do accept the story is referring to Brayton II, and that the gods did indeed tell the Aurelia to destroy the planet, then we are faced with a new problem. Data looked back at Picard. If all of this is true, then there is an intelligent force creating these temporal rifts, and has now proven itself to be of hostile intent. Until now, there was the possibility that the hostile actions shown by those brought through the rift were simply accidental and based on their natural behavior. But why bring other races from the past to cause this type of destruction? Picard asked. As you have said yourself, Data, any race that can create these rifts should have the potential for powerful weapons of their own. I do not know, sir. We are theorizing without a great deal of information. Despite our best reasoning, our hypothesis may ultimately be incorrect. Picard nodded. Then continue your research, Mr. Data. We need to find out if our hypothesis is correct or not. He turned to the Admiral. Sir, I suggest that until we get more information on what exactly is happening, we assume we are correct and that there is a hostile force behind these rifts. Benson nodded. I agree, Jean-Luc. If the truth behind these incidents turns out to be as wrong, well, nothing will be lost. I will contact Starfleet and recommend that they go to alert status and send us some help out here. Meanwhile, continue your patrol and research. If you find anything else, contact me immediately. Picard nodded. Yes, sir. He turned off the viewer to return back to the bridge and continue the search. The Swift Eagle was now at warp 8.9, with Chief Engineer Filton doing his best to get more speed out of the engines. Captain Reagan was still pacing the bridge impatiently. They were still 20 minutes from intercepting the science vessel that had sent out the distress signal. He finally sat down as his first officer walked over to his position. The signal came from the USS Skotar, registry NCC 20011, under command of Daniel Vincent. It's a second-class science vessel assigned to study the life forms in the Minkar star system. Reagan turned to look up. The Minkar system? Gelato, that's 2 sectors over. Marian Gelato shook her head slightly. I don't understand it either, sir. They would have to have had to travel for weeks to get to their current position, but their ID signal does check out. Lieutenant Phillips, anything else from them? No, sir. I've been trying all frequencies, but they have yet to get a response to their last transmission. I'm not even picking up their distress beacon. He paused as he switched to another frequency. I am picking up a signal from a log buoy near the last location of their last transmission. Mr. Ogami, any ships in the area? Reagan's asked, not expecting there to be. The Swift Eagle scanners had yet to pick up anything, even though the Skotar should have been in range within 15 minutes. Ogami checked his tactical scanner again. No ships in the area, but there are some sensor reflections ahead, indicating metallic masses, possibly wreckage. There is also some residual energy from the area of reflections. At this distance, I could only hazard a guess that it's from an exchange of weapons fire. Sensors are also picking up the location of the log buoy. looked back up from the sensors. There is the possibility that there could be a cloaked ship in the area. I suggest we go to red alert and raise shields. Reagan nodded in agreement. Prudent move, Lieutenant. Go to red alert and raise shields to full power. Stand by on phasers, just in case. Soon, several large metal chunks floated in front of the Swift Eagle, evidence of what had once been a ship, or parts of a larger ship. Several hundred meters away was another debris field, the remains of the Skotar. The command crew of the Swift Eagle was now gathered in the briefing room as recordings from the science ship log buoy appeared on the view screen. The calm face of a 40-year-old man appeared on the screen. This face did not show any overt signs that anything was wrong or had happened to his ship, nor did his voice as the audio portion cut in. This is Captain Daniel W. Vincent of the science vessel Skotar. We were in the Minkar star system on our mission of studying the indigenous life forms when an anomaly appeared around the ship. Systems went down to emergency power levels for a few moments, but then went back online as the phenomenon vanished. Science Officer Denvar identified the phenomenon as a disturbance in the time-space continuum. How or why this phenomenon appeared is unknown at this time, as is knowing exactly how much time has elapsed, if any, from the disturbance, as we have been transported to the Tyronian sector and will attempt to communicate with Starbase 43. The view screen went dark as Commander Gelato stood up to address the group. According to their scans, they encountered a temporal rift that matches the one that we encountered. Unlike the ones we witnessed, this rift did not carry the Skotar through time, but only through space. That explains why they appeared here so quickly, but not what happened to their ship, or what the other wreckage is. Gelato shook her head as she pointed to the screen. I had the computer display only the first part of the record. I thought it of interest to show the difference in the rift that they encountered compared to the one that we did. So far, all reported rifts have brought something out of another time into ours, but the rift they encountered did two things differently. Not only did it affect something from our current time, but it also transported them through space without transporting them through time. Reagan sat in silence for a moment. Marion, you said that this was only the first portion of the log? Yes, the last portion shows what happened to them once they were brought here. She sat down, working the computer to begin the log replay. Captain Vincent again appeared, but this time the calm face wore lines of worry. Log supplemental. Our attempts to contact Starbase 43 have failed. Communications Officer Lewis can find nothing wrong with the equipment, but we are unable to send any transmission, nor are we able to pick up any. Star readings appear to indicate that any shift in time has been negligible, if we even did shift in time. The view went dark for a moment, then started back up with the background behind Vincent being bathed in red light. I have gone to red alert as sensors are detecting another temporal disturbance only a few kilometers off our starboard side. There appears to be a ship of some kind coming out of the rift. With communications out, and as a precaution, I am launching an active ship's log buoy with full tie-in. The screen suddenly changed from showing only Vincent's face to an overhead view of the entire bridge. The picture paused as Gelato spoke. That was the last log entry that Captain Vincent made. The following is the record from the computer, which, as you know, is automatically started when a ship goes to red alert and an active log buoy is launched. I believe that the recording of what their sensors were picking up would be far more informative than the bridge recordings. The view faded from the bridge to that of the temporal rift and a large ship moving out of it. The group let out a quiet exclamation as the cube shape became fully clear and easily recognized as a Borg scout ship. Commander Gelato walked to the screen as she explained the video. The Borg ship instantly engaged its tractor field as it attempted to capture the Skotar. Captain Vincent opened fire on the Borg with his phasers. The view showed a smaller Federation ship firing its phasers, striking the Borg ship. Portions of the Borg ship vaporized from the blast as it returned fire with some type of green energy beam. The commander continued her narration of the events. The phaser blast destroyed 40% of the Borg ship before it returned fire. Their tractor field had drained the Skotar's deflectors by 23%, and the energy beam that they fired hit the ship in the secondary hull, but caused minimal damage. Captain Vincent continued to fire, knocking out the Borg's tractor field and what the computer had determined was a high-powered laser. Then, the Borg launched some type of device at the Skotar. The screen showed a glowing blue object shoot towards the science ship. A flash of white, and then all went dark. The commander looked at Ogami, who continued to lecture. The log ends there. The object that the Borg launched was some type of antimatter mine. The detonation destroyed the Skotar and finished off what was left of the Borg ship. The blue Borean sat back in her chair. Then there's a strong possibility that the Borg are behind these rifts. I don't think so, Tarl, Marion said as she sat back down. Notice how easily the phasers of the Skotar destroyed the bridge ship. The Battle of Wolf 359 showed how ineffective our weapons are against Borg shields. Further, sensor logs showed that the subspace field around the Borg ship was considerably less powerful than any previous scans from their ships. I would venture to say that this was an early Borg ship, one that is from before a time when the Collective encountered phasers. The commander quickly added, if the Borg had been the cause of the rift, they certainly would have had to use something larger than that scout ship, if for no other reason than to have the power to create the temporal rift. Ogami agreed. According to the sensors, the Borg ship was outclassed by 48% against a Sagan-class science ship. While the tractor field was nearly equal in power to what we know, they used lasers. Although powerful, even the Skotar could have withstood a lengthy battle against that. It was the antimatter mine that did them in. He pointed to the now dark screen. In addition, energy readings indicate that the Borg ship could not have generated the power to create a temporal rift. Even in this time period, it would be impossible for one of their bigger ships to come close to the power requirements for a temporal rift, at least with the technology that we know they have. Reagan frowned. The rifts were bad enough, but he certainly did not want the Borg involved in this. He looked at his officers. Opinions? Ensign Blackhawk spoke out. It seems to me that there is someone or something behind these rifts. It's as though somebody has found a way to create them and has been experimenting to see exactly what they could do with it. The others nodded. If that is true, then it seems they are learning what the rifts can do fairly rapidly now, Marion added to the observation. Although I fail to understand why the other races are being used like pawns in a chase game. I suppose it has been fortunate that this technology appears to only work in bringing objects from the past forward in time. I cannot imagine the destruction possible if someone began to transport Borgs or Romulans from 100 years into the future, or even other alien ships we have no clue exist at this time. If that happens, things could become far more serious. Captain Reagan stood up. I think things have gotten serious enough, Commander. Contact Admiral Benson so we can tell him about what we found here. The group also stood up. And put the ship on yellow alert.